Hello friends, how are you? Hope you are doing well. So let us continue our discussion related to the environmental management system and its requirements. Next requirement related to the operational planning and control. So first of all, we can ensure the established process for operational planning and control. We need to ensure the establishing operating criteria for this process, implementation and control of the processes in accordance with the operating criteria. We can think about the hierarchy of controls like elimination, substitution, and administrative. We can think about the controls related to the planned changes or unintended changes and to mitigate any adverse effects associated with them. Organizations shall consider the life cycle perspectives for controlling and related to the operational planning actually. So establishing controls as appropriate to ensure its environmental requirements addressed in the design and development process of the products and services. So again we are saying that considering each life cycle stage, determining the environmental requirements for the procurement of the products and services, communicate its relevant environmental requirements to the external providers like contractors, suppliers, consider the need to provide information about potential significant environmental aspects related to the transportation, delivery, use, end of life treatment, and the final disposal of the products and services. So, for this to ensure, the auditor can verify certain records like records on the risk assessments and process evaluations, acceptance criteria, product requirements, life cycle assessments. We can think about the customer requirements, monitoring plans, release criteria, production planning, process controls. We can think about the change controls, controls of the outsourced processes, procurement specifications, supplier contracts, material safety data sheets, disposal instructions, maintenance records. So we can think about number of processes lead time, process capability index, performance indicators for process or resource. These are certain KPIs which you can verify related to the operational planning and control. So for this particular requirement, as I said, we need to understand the operational criteria for the processes, implementation controls of these processes, planned changes or unintended changes we need to consider for the actions related to the mitigation for adverse effects associated to these changes actually. We can talk about the organization ensure the outsourced processes also are being effectively controlled or not, and we thought about the life cycle perspective, and we can ask the questions related to the life cycle perspective actually. Design and development processes for the products and services, related to the procurement requirements, related to the communication to the external providers, related to the potential significant environmental aspects, communications with respect to the transportation, delivery, use, end of life treatment, and final disposal of its products and services. So these questions you can ask. Next requirement is related to the emergency preparedness and response. So the organization shall establish, implement, maintain the process which is required for responding to the potential emergency situations. So the organization shall prepare to respond by planning actions to prevent or mitigate adverse environmental impacts from any emergency situations, respond to those actual emergency situations, take actions to prevent or mitigate the consequences of the emergency situations, periodically testing, conducting the mock drills for planned response actions, periodically reviewing the planned response actions, providing relevant information and training needed to the emergency preparedness and response. So for this all to ensure, you can go to verify certain documents like emergency plans, fire protection plans, emergency drills conducted related to the fire, chemicals, accidents, evaluation of the drills and measures, instructions for the malfunctions and incident plans. We can think about the operating plans of the fire brigades, evacuation plans, assembly points, information on the neighborhoods, and instruction for the visitors and the contractors. So when you're asking the questions related to the emergency preparedness and response, you can ask that has that organization prepared for the response by planning actions to prevent or mitigate the adverse environmental impacts from any emergency situation, respond to the actual emergency situations, take actions to prevent or mitigate those consequences of the emergency situations, periodically test and review those processes related to the emergency situations, and provide relevant information and training related to the emergency preparedness and response. Next requirement is about monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation. So for this requirement, the organization shall monitor, measure, analyze, and evaluate its environmental performance. So for this to understand, we need to consider certain the organization shall determine or consider certain factors, like we can think about what needs to be monitored and measured actually. What are the KPIs? What are the environmental matrices actually? The methods for monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation. The criteria against the organization will evaluate its environmental performance. When the monitoring and measurement shall be performed, the frequency of that. When the results for the monitoring and measurement shall be analyzed, evaluated, and communicated actually. So the organization shall ensure that calibrated and verified monitoring and measurement equipment are being used and maintained as appropriate for measuring and monitoring the environmental performance actually. So the organization shall evaluate its environmental performance and effectiveness of the environmental management system. For this to verify, you can go through with certain records like in compliance obligations, measuring plans, measurement records, environmental reports, statistical analysis, operational logs, notifications for the authorities, performance indicators for the environmental objectives, capabilities of the processes, comparison with the competitors also. So you can ask certain questions, as I said earlier, that related to the needs for the monitoring and measurement. First of all, what needs to be monitored and measured? The methods for monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation. The criteria against which the organization will evaluate its environmental performance. So we need to consider certain appropriate indicators as per the legal requirements, as per the client requirement, customer requirements, as per the international standard specifications as well. And monitoring measurement shall be performed, and we can think about the frequency of monitoring and measurement actually. So certain questions you can ask related to this, and lastly we can say whether that organization has appropriate documented information related to the evidence of monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation of the results. Next is about evaluation of the compliance requirement. So any organization who is complying with IS 14001 or EMS shall establish, implement, maintain the process related to the evaluation of the fulfillment of its compliance obligations actually. So to ensure this fulfillment of the compliance obligations, first of all, determine the frequency that compliance will be evaluated, evaluate the compliance and take actions if needed, and maintain the knowledge and understanding of its compliance status. So for this to review or ensure the compliance related to this particular requirement for evaluation of compliance, go through with the procedures, evaluation and evidences, level of compliance in relations to the customers, official authorities, neighbors, general public, process capabilities, supplier assessments, customer satisfaction index, comparison figures with the competitions, environmentally relevant or economic indicators also. So you can ask certain questions related to this as an auditor, that whether that organization has determined the frequency of the compliance or not, which compliance will be evaluated and when it will be evaluated, evaluating compliance and taking actions if needed, maintaining the knowledge and understanding of the compliance status. So these questions you can ask to the auditee. Next requirement is related to the internal audit. So the organization shall conduct internal audits at the frequent planned intervals and conforms to the organization's own requirements of EMS and the international standard, this in particular international standard. And you can go through with the audit planning, audit reports. You can measure certain KPIs like number or length of the audits per operating units actually you can. So when you are asking the question to the auditee, you can ask like, has the organization conducted any internal audit or audits at a planned or internal frequent intervals to determine if the environmental management system, or whether the environmental management system is conforming to the its own requirements of environmental management to this particular international standard, and it's being effectively implemented or maintained or not actually. Next is about the internal audit program requirement. So internal audit program includes the frequency, methods, responsibilities, planning requirements, and reporting of its internal audit. So for this to ensure effectively, the organization shall define the audit criteria and the scope of each audit, select the auditors and conduct the audits to ensure the objectivity and impartiality in the audit process, ensure the results of the audits are reported to the relevant management. So for this to verify, you can go through with certain evidences like internal audit procedures, audit plans, audit criteria, audit reports, non-conformity reports, You can go through with methods to introduce corrections and corrective actions, proof of the auditor's qualifications, and we can verify certain key performance indicators like level of fulfillment of the requirements, level of the implementation of the internal audits. Actually, you can ask certain questions related to this, like has the organization defined the audit criteria scope for each audit or not, selected auditors and conducted audits to ensure objectivity and impartiality of the audit process, ensure that the results of audits are reported to the management or not, auditors criteria you can verify, right? So certain question as an example I shared with you, so you can ask, and you can think about the frequency, methods, responsibilities, planning requirements related to the internal audits. Next is about management review. Management review, for this requirement, the top management shall review the organization's environmental management system and at planned interval levels, and we can think about to ensure its continual suitability, adequacy, effectiveness. So for this to ensure, the management review shall be including following factors like we can think about external and internal issues, the needs and expectations of the interested parties, significant environmental aspects, associated impacts, risk on opportunities. We can think about the conformities, corrective actions, monitoring, measurement results, fulfillment of the compliance obligations, audit results, adequacy of the resources, relevant communication from the interested parties. So for this to verify, you can see certain documents like management review reports, the reports for internal audit, process audits, product audits, status of the corrective actions, resource requirement and assignment plans, risk analysis, assessment of the environmental performance. So the output of the management review shall include the conclusion on the suitability, adequacy and effectiveness of the EMS, decisions related to the continual improvement opportunities, decisions related to the need for changes, change actions, resources, actions if and when the environmental objectives are not being met or not being achieved. So opportunity to improve integration in environmental management system into the different business processes. So the organization shall retain documented information as an evidence for result of management reviews actually. So for this to ensure, certain KPIs are there, that environmental performance indicators, benchmark comparison figures, achievement of the objectives, level of compliance, duration of the measures for corrective actions, trend analysis. These are certain KPIs which you can discuss within the management review and you can verify during the audit as well. So what questions you can ask, as I said to you, that the organization shall review or their management shall review certain topics like external internal issues, their interested party communications and needs and expectations for the interested parties, including compliance obligation, aspects, impacts, risk and opportunities, monitoring measurement results, non-conforming corrective actions, audit results, adequacy of the resources. So these are certain things which you can verify during the audit and you can ask questions related to the management review. Next requirement related to the improvement program. So organizations shall determine the opportunities for improvement and implement the necessary actions to achieve the intended outcomes of the environmental management system. So for this to verify, as an auditor, you can go through with certain documents like improvement projects, continual improvement performance database, environmental management plans, project plans, records on the targets, progress reports, management reviews, corrective action plans, and you can verify certain other documents like and even indicators as well, emissions performance indicators, volumes of the waste generated, use of the resources, and we can think about the ecological footprints, life cycle KPIs, risk and performance indicators, comparison figures with the competition, reject and rework cost and the times, benchmarking results, total cost, downtime cost, number of proposals and number of the employees. So certain key performance indicators and relevant documents which you can verify related to the to ensure that organization is having the opportunities for improvement and it's recorded as an evidence also. Next is about how you can ask the questions to the auditee related to the improvement program. So has that organization determined opportunities for improvement and implement necessary controls to achieve the intended outcome of its environmental management system. Next is about the requirement of non-conformity and corrective action. So the organization shall react to the non-conformities and take actions to control and correct them, deal with the consequences including mitigating adverse environmental impacts, and evaluate the need for the actions to eliminate the cause of non-conformity. In order to that, we can think about reviewing the non-conformity, determining the causes of non-conformity, determining the if any similar non-conformity exists and that could occur potentially again actually. So for this to verify, you can go through with certain documents like records of the registrations and reporting of the non-conformities, evaluations, their records of the results, instructions related to the corrective actions, root cause analysis, training plans, training certificates, agreements, records of the management reviews related to the non-conformity and corrective actions. There are certain KPIs which you can verify, like process times related to the actions for the non-conformities, times and cost of the non-conformity processing actually. So these KPIs you can verify. So as I said, there are certain questions which you can ask to the auditee to ask related to the non-conformity and corrective action, where we can say when a non-conformity has occurred, the organization reacted to that non-conformity, has taken any actions or dealt with the consequences for that non-conformity. So evaluate the need of actions, like for this to ensure that reviewing the non-conformity, determine the cause of non-conformity, implement any actions needed or not, and review the effectiveness of any corrective action which is being taken actually. So next is about, like, we can ask, has the documented information being retained as an evidence for the non-conformities and the subsequent actions associated to them, the results of the non-conformities and the corrective actions associated with them. Next requirement is related to the continual improvement. So the organization shall continually improve the suitability, adequacy and effectiveness of the environmental management system to, of course, enhance the environmental performance and the environmental management culture as well. So we can think about the certain documents which you can verify as an auditor, like project plans, records related to the target fulfillment and the trends, progress reports, management reviews, improvement suggestion schemes. So for this to ensure, there are certain KPIs which you can verify, like extent of the achievements of the objectives, number of improvement implemented, benchmarking, ranking index, relationship between cost and benefits, reactions and implementations times. So these things you can, as an KPI, you can consider. So you can ask the question to the auditee, has that organization continually improved the suitability, adequacy and effectiveness of the environmental management system? What is the objective? To increase the environmental performance or to enhance the environmental performance actually. So that's how we complete our discussion related to the environmental management system and its requirements. I hope you like the friends, and it will be very helpful for you to successfully or effectively implement the environmental management system in your workplaces. Thank you very much. Thank you.